Hey there YouTube, we are back and we are starting a new project, and today's project is going to be restoring this beautiful, not yet beautiful, but it will be, number 5 Stanley-Bailey hand plane. This is what they call a jack plane because it's sort of jack of all trades. It does a really good job of, you can use it for flattening out moderate sized pieces like a coffee tabletop kind of thing, or something around that scale. These are very commonly used for shooting boards, which I did a little detail on a shooting board in one of my cabinet videos for squaring up the face frame styles and rails. But also these are, you can use it as a smoothing plane. It's a little bit large for a smoothing plane, but you get the idea. Very handy plane. Hugely recommended to have one of these in your arsenal, especially if you're going to be doing any kind of woodwork. So this is as I found it at an antique store. This particular model has a corrugated sole. Some people really don't like those. They say they fill up with chips, but in my experience I really haven't had any issue with that at all. But we're going to work on flattening the sole to a reasonable extent. Again, I have a smoothing plane, which is a number 4 Bailey that I went through a very long procedure to get the plane sole dead flat on that thing. So with my other planes, my number 6 joiner and this number 5, I don't need it to be absolutely positively dead flat because that's what the smoothing plane's for. But we're going to get it close enough. We're going to restore the blade because I'm sure it's a catastrophe, and obviously we're going to clean this whole thing up. So let's go ahead and get started. So for taking these things apart, it's really simple. All you need is a flathead screwdriver. And we're going to take the front knob off. There's the post itself, and then we can actually just use this to pop that brass knob out. Our handle's good to go. This is in really good shape. I'll probably just sand this up. There's some red paint that somehow got on here from its history. So we'll sand this up, get that paint off of there, and we'll retreat this with, I like using boiled linseed oil and Minwax paste wax. It worked out phenomenally on the countertop that you guys saw. Take this lever cap off. This thing, holy smokes, is that rusty, crusty, and not super pretty. That's going to need some lubrication there because that hinge is super tight. Here's our chip breaker and blade assembly. Looking at that, I want to see what the mating relationship is between the chip breaker and the plane iron, aka blade. So let's go ahead and see if we can take this thing apart. It doesn't look like it's terribly rusty, so I think this will probably come apart just fine. Yep, so we're in good shape here. That's pretty cool. I've done a few plane restorations, but I haven't seen one that's got this nice blue temper color on it on the bottom of the chip breaker. That's kind of cool. Our plain blade. Let's see. Well, it doesn't have any colossal nicks in the blade, so that's a good sign because it tells me that it's not going to take a heck of a lot of work to get it to get the edge restored on this thing. I'll show you my new favorite sharpening system. It's the Worksharp WS3000. I just bought it about a year ago. That thing does beautiful work for hand tools, chisels, planes, that kind of thing. So we'll do a video on that, separate video, to get the edge brought in on this. That's one of the last things, frankly, that we'll be doing. This part here is called the frog. We're going to get that off. It's 2 little flathead screws in there. Yeah, these aren't rusted up either. That's actually really nice. apart just fine. There's our frog. You don't need those screws. Wow, that's pretty nasty in there. But that'll all clean up just fine. We're going to take our frog apart. This is the lever cap adjusting screw, so you can adjust how tight the lever cap, how much pressure it puts on your blade and chip iron or a chip breaker. This nut here is your depth adjusting knob. This is left-handed thread, so as I turn it to the left, I'm actually backing it off. This is a really quick and easy way to identify the era that these planes came from. During World War II, brass was obviously in high demand for ammunition casings, and so during planes that were made during World War II, the depth adjusting knob was made out of steel, not brass. This is definitely made out of brass, so this plane, judging by other characteristics, it's probably almost certainly before World War II. My number 4 smoothing plane, which I easily consider my finest plane, that is a World War II era, because that's a steel depth adjusting knob. This right here is the frog position adjusting screw, or boss. That goes into a screw right here. This little crotch, if you will, sits on there, and that allows you to very carefully position the frog forward and backward, and it keeps it square to the plane. I have other planes manufactured by a company called Union. They don't have this. That's actually pretty convenient for keeping the frog square to the plane, because when you don't have it, it's a real pain in the butt to get it lined up at the proper position and keeping it square. Actually, come to think of it, my smoothing plane doesn't have that either. And it's a Bailey. It's just a different era. So the frog is basically as apart as we're going to get it. This is for the depth adjustment, so that's what the blade depth adjustment lever, this little pin rides in there, and that's, as you screw this in and out, that's what pushes this little thing here that rides in your chip breaker, and that's what pushes it forward and backward to adjust the depth of your blade. This is held in with a little push pin that you can hammer out. I probably won't bother taking it out. You don't really need to. This is very nicely ground though. That's good to see. Not a lot of grind marks on that at all from the machining process. This screw is already loose, so that's pretty cool. This again is a frog adjusting screw. That came right out. And this is the rear handle, aka tote. I don't know why they call it a tote, but that's what it's called. This seems to be coming up just fine as well. Okay, so that time just the knob came off, and then there's a second screw on here. Seems like number 4 planes and smaller, they only have the screw coming through the top of the tote, but larger planes, 5s and 6s, they have 2 screws securing it. You got a small screw down there. This, again, looks like it's in really good shape. It had some kind of an emblem here at some point in time, which I've never seen before. It's gone. I have no idea what it is, so we're going to treat it the exact same way as we're going to treat the front knob here. We're just going to sand it, smooth it out, and finish it with boiled linseed oil and wax, and we should be good to go. A lot of times these are broken. I've got, looking at it, I got 1, 2, 3 planes that have broken totes, and I still need to fix those. This comes right out. That's pretty cool. There you have it. This thing is completely disassembled. So we'll just clean this up with, I've got an old toothbrush. Between that and some kerosene, that should clean it up just fine. Again, we're going to sand the outside of it. and then coat it in oil. This is cast iron, so it will rust if you don't coat it in oil. Yeah, but I want to get that red paint off of there. For the bottom of it, once we have this thing, all these parts cleaned up, we're going to use sandpaper on a granite surface plate that I have, and that's what we're going to just running this thing back and forth on it. That's how we're going to get the sole of this thing flat. A very important note on that is that the plane needs to be fully assembled, blade and everything, all put together when you do that flattening process, because all those pieces, the front knob, the rear tote, the frog and blade and chip breaker and all that, they apply stresses to the cast iron body, and you might think that it's a super rigid body in and of itself because I can't flex it, but it does make a significant difference. I learned that the hard way when I did that super fine flattening technique on my smoothing plane. I didn't want to risk denting the blade on there, because I already had the blade really nicely sharpened before I went to scraping it flat. So I left it out, and then once I put it back in and checked the flatness, it was way off. So I had to do it with the blade in there anyways. It does make a difference. So I'm going to call it here. I'm going to get a toothbrush and some kerosene, and we'll call this the end of video 1 here. And we'll get back to video 2. We'll be cleaning this thing up with a toothbrush and see how good that Japanning looks. Alright, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next video.